I never planned for any of this to happen. Honestly, I don't even know when exactly things began to spiral out of control. I suppose it started with small things. Little moments that, in hindsight, seem so obvious. My name is Emily, and I've been married to Jake for almost 8 years. We have 2 kids, and on the outside, our life looks perfect. We have a nice house, good careers, and a pretty standard suburban life. But anyone who's been in a long marriage knows that things can get routine, predictable. Sometimes, I felt like I was just going through the motions, being a wife, a mom, a colleague, but not really living for myself. The spark in my marriage with Jake had dimmed over time, and I started feeling like I was losing a part of myself in all the roles I was playing. Work had always been a safe place for me, a place where I felt competent and in control. It was where I could get away from the kids' constant needs and Jake's growing indifference. I worked in marketing at a pretty big company, and over time, I started developing a close relationship with a couple of my colleagues. Rick and Dan. Both were in their early 30s, not too much younger than me, and they were both funny, confident, and easy to talk to. Rick was the marketing manager, always coming up with new ideas, always the center of attention at work events. Dan, on the other hand, was quieter but had this dry humor that I loved. He was a senior analyst, smart and sharp, and I felt like I could really talk to him about anything. At first, it was nothing more than casual conversation. But then, as time went on, it became more. Rick started joking around with me more often, calling me his work wife, and it made me laugh. It felt nice to be the center of someone's attention in that way, someone who wasn't just asking about the kids or making sure I was running errands. It was refreshing. And then there was Dan. His quiet compliments, and the way he seemed to really listen when I spoke, it gave me a sense of being seen in a way I hadn't felt in a while. Not that Jake didn't love me. I knew he did. But he wasn't paying attention to me the way I needed. It all came to a head one night at a company event. It was supposed to be a casual after hours gathering at a bar, but by the end of the night, things felt different. There was a certain electricity in the air. I was wearing a new dress I'd bought on a whim, one I hadn't worn in ages. It was a little tighter than I normally would wear, but I liked how it made me feel. Confident, alive, almost daring. Rick and Dan were there, both giving me that look. I could tell they'd been drinking, but I didn't mind. I was feeling a little tipsy myself. They both started talking to me at once, teasing me about how I'd been so quiet lately, how I'd been all business, no fun. The conversation flowed easily, and I couldn't help but smile at their attention. There was this playful tension in the air. I could feel it. And it felt good. At some point, we ended up in one of the quieter corners of the bar. The music was loud, but we were close enough that I could hear Dan's voice clearly. "You look different tonight, Emily," he said with a half smile, his eyes scanning me in a way that made my heart race. "I don't know about that," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but my body was betraying me. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. Rick leaned in from the other side. "You're always beautiful, Em. It's just that you've got this fire in your eyes tonight." The words were so simple, but they struck a chord deep inside me. I hadn't realized how much I missed feeling like this, seen, desired. And I knew, right then, that they could tell how much I was enjoying the attention. The spark of something dangerous, something forbidden, was igniting between us. The night blurred after that. The 3 of us left the bar, and before I knew it, we were in an Uber on our way to a hotel. I hadn't even questioned it. It just felt natural. But at the same time, I knew it was wrong. I knew what we were doing was a bad idea. Still, I didn't stop it. We got to the hotel, and I remember the dim lighting, the silence between us as we entered the room. I didn't feel drunk, but everything felt a little surreal, like I was watching myself from a distance. Dan was the first to break the silence. "We don't have to do anything, Emily," he said, his voice low and almost serious. But Rick was already moving closer to me, his hand brushing against my arm. "No one's going to judge you here. You're allowed to have fun too." I felt a wave of guilt, but it was quickly washed away by the desire to be seen, to feel wanted. And then it happened. I don't know who kissed who first, but suddenly we were all tangled together in the soft, dimly lit hotel room. My heart pounded in my chest, and every rational thought I had vanished. What happened next was a blur of hands, mouths, and heated skin. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. As the night wore on, I remember thinking about Jake, about how I'd be lying to him the next morning when he asked me how my night went. But in that moment, With Rick and Dan, I didn't care. I was just here. I was wanted, and that's what I needed more than anything. The morning after felt like stepping into a different reality. I woke up to an unfamiliar ceiling, the soft buzz of the early morning light streaming through the curtains. My body felt heavy, like a weight had settled on me. Not from the alcohol, but from the decisions I'd made the night before. The sheets were tangled around me, and I could hear Rick and Dan moving around in the other room. My mind was racing. I tried to push the feelings away, to tell myself that it was a mistake, but something deep inside me told me I had crossed a line, and there was no going back. Rick was the first to speak when I finally left the bed. "Hey," he said softly, looking at me with that mischievous grin I'd seen 100 times before, but now it felt different. "You okay?" I just nodded, not knowing what to say. The weight of what had happened hung in the air like a thick fog. Dan was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, but his eyes lifted when I walked into the room. I could feel the intensity of his gaze, and it made my stomach churn with guilt and, strangely, excitement. "Don't worry," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "Nothing happened that you didn't want to happen." The words felt like a small comfort, but they only made me more aware of the guilt creeping up on me. I had been an active participant in everything. I didn't stop it. I didn't say no. But now, sitting here, the reality of what I'd done was beginning to hit me. "I didn't expect this," I said, my voice barely a whisper, trying to justify my actions to myself as much as to them. Dan raised an eyebrow. "Expect what?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I didn't expect to feel this way. I wasn't looking for this. I just needed to feel something." "Anything?" Rick stepped closer to me, his voice lower now. "It's okay, Emily. It's okay to need things, to want things. We all have our moments of weakness." I wanted to argue with him, to say it wasn't just a moment of weakness, but the truth was, I couldn't. Deep down, I felt a desperate need for something more, something I wasn't getting at home. Jake and I had been drifting for so long. The affection between us had turned into something mechanical, and I was beginning to feel like I was suffocating. "Felt alive, you know?" I continued, my voice breaking slightly. "I felt like I mattered, like I was wanted in a way I haven't felt in a long time." Rick and Dan exchanged a glance. It wasn't lost on me that they knew exactly what I was saying. They had both been offering me the attention and affection I was craving. And, in that moment, I wasn't sure if I regretted it. But I also knew there was a consequence to all of this. I had betrayed Jake, my husband, the father of my children. That fact, that truth, was gnawing at me like a silent parasite. But at the same time, the guilt didn't seem to outweigh the need I had felt that night. The need to be wanted, to be desired. As the morning wore on, I tried to tell myself that I could leave this behind, that I could brush it off as a one-time thing. But deep down, I knew that this wasn't something that could just be forgotten. The way Rick had touched me, the way Dan had looked at me, it was all still fresh in my mind, like a vivid imprint I couldn't erase. I gathered my things and, after a few awkward moments, said my goodbyes to both of them. There was a strange sense of finality to it, as if everything that had happened had already been written, and now I had to live with the consequences. I felt numb as I walked out of that hotel room. I thought about Jake. I thought about my kids. And then, just as quickly, I pushed those thoughts away. What had happened between us, between me and Rick and Dan, wasn't just about sex. It was about more than that. It was about me feeling neglected, invisible in my own life. But I knew I had to face the consequences sooner or later. When I got home that afternoon, the kids were at a friend's house, and Jake was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, his expression neutral. But there was a slight tension in the air, a subtle shift that made my heart race. "How was the event?" Jake asked, as if he hadn't just been texting me the entire night, asking how things were going. He knew I had been out with work colleagues, but he didn't seem concerned, or maybe he just didn't know what to say. Either way, I could feel something was off, even though we were only exchanging casual pleasantries. I stood by the door, taking off my shoes, my mind running a million miles a minute. The guilt was starting to settle in, and I had no idea how to start the conversation, or even if I should. Should I just keep it to myself? Should I pretend like nothing happened? I wanted to say something, but the words felt stuck. I hadn't even processed it all myself. How could I explain what had happened, what I had done, without completely breaking him? Without destroying everything? But that's when he did it. Jake took a deep breath, and his eyes, usually so calm, flashed with something else, something sharp, something that made my stomach tighten in dread. He put down his phone and looked at me, the silence stretching between us. "I know, Emily," he said quietly. "I know what happened last night." My heart dropped into my stomach, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. How did he know? I didn't understand. My mind raced, but there was no denying the truth in his eyes. He had found out somehow, and I couldn't hide it anymore. "How do you know?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. Jake didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, and then, in a quiet voice that seemed to carry the weight of everything, he said, "I saw the videos." The floor dropped out from under me. I had no words. No way to explain, no way to justify. All I could do was stand there, feeling the full impact of what I had done, and knowing that nothing could ever be the same again. His words echoed in my head, reverberating like a loud ringing in my ears. I saw his face, the hurt, the confusion, the anger that was slowly taking over his usually calm demeanor. Jake never showed his emotions openly, but the way he was looking at me now was different. It was like he was seeing me for the first time, but with a kind of betrayal in his eyes I'd never thought I'd have to face. I don't know what to say," I whispered, taking a step back, as if trying to escape the weight of the situation. My legs felt weak, my heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't catch my breath. Jake leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the couch. "Don't say anything," he said through clenched teeth. "I've seen enough." I couldn't look at him. I couldn't bear to see the pain I'd caused. I wanted to explain, to tell him everything, to beg for his forgiveness, but I was paralyzed. I knew there was no way to make this right, not after what I had done. "I don't even know where to start," I said quietly, my voice shaky. "Jake, I didn't plan this. It just happened. I didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't about you, it was about me." Jake shook his head, as if trying to process what I was saying. "It was never just about you, Emily. You know that. It was about us. It was about trust. You broke that. And now I'm looking at you, and I don't know who you are anymore." His words cut deep, deeper than I thought anything could. I felt my chest tighten like the air was being sucked out of the room. How had we come to this point? I never imagined I would be here, explaining my infidelity to the man I loved. But now it was happening, and I couldn't take it back. "I didn't want this," I said, my voice barely audible. "I didn't want to hurt you, Jake." But I felt invisible. I felt like we were living in two separate worlds, and I didn't know how to fix it. Jake stood up abruptly, pacing across the room, his face tense with anger. "Invisible? You think you were invisible? Emily, I've been here. I've been with you through everything. The kids, the house, the work, the bills. I've been here. But you weren't. You were already somewhere else, with them. I didn't even know I was losing you until it was too late." I felt a wave of guilt hit me like a physical punch. I had been so selfish, so caught up in my own needs, my own desires, that I hadn't stopped to think about what Jake was going through, what he needed. He had been there, all along, trying to hold our family together, while I had been slipping away without even realizing it. "Jake, I'm sorry," I whispered, my eyes filling with tears. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I wasn't trying to hurt you, I swear. It was just, I don't know, I felt lost." He stopped pacing and turned to face me, his expression softening just a little, but the hurt in his eyes remained. "Lost, so, you slept with them to feel found?" His voice cracked on the last word, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "Is that what you're telling me?" I nodded, unable to speak the words out loud. Yes, that was exactly what I was telling him. I hadn't been looking for love, or even passion, really. I had been looking for something to fill the emptiness I had been feeling for so long. I had been looking for validation, for someone to see me, to want me in the way that I hadn't felt in a long time, and I had found it, with Rick and Dan. But at what cost? "I don't know what happened, Jake," I continued, my voice trembling. "It wasn't just sex. It was about feeling like I mattered again, about feeling desired. I've been feeling so invisible, like you don't even see me anymore. And I know it was wrong. I know it was a mistake. But I was so desperate to feel something, to feel alive. I thought maybe if I just let myself feel something for once, it would make everything better." Jake was quiet for a long moment. He didn't say anything, didn't move. I could see him processing what I was saying, trying to make sense of it all. "You didn't just hurt me, Emily," he said finally, his voice low but filled with quiet intensity. You hurt us. You hurt our family. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. I felt my heart shatter at his words. The thought of losing him, of losing everything we had built together, was more painful than I could bear. I wanted to scream, to tell him that I never meant for it to go this far, but I couldn't. I had no excuses. I had no way to take back what I had done. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I did it. But I love you. I love our family. And I am so sorry. Please don't give up on us. I know I've messed up. I know I've destroyed everything. But I want to make it right. I want to try. If you'll let me. Jake looked at me, his face filled with a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. For a moment, I thought he might walk away, that he might end this right there. But then he spoke, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I don't know, Emily, he said quietly. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can forget what you did. But I'm not going to make any decisions right now. I need time. We both do. I nodded, feeling the tears fall freely down my cheeks. Take all the time you need, I whispered. I'll be here. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, if you'll give me the chance. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I could fix it. I wasn't sure if anything could ever be the same again. The next few days were nothing short of a living nightmare. Jake and I barely spoke. There was no yelling, no screaming, just an overwhelming silence that hung over everything. It felt like we were both standing on the edge of something we couldn't repair, yet neither of us was willing to make the final leap into the unknown. I couldn't go back to work. I couldn't concentrate. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jake's face. His hurt, his anger, his disbelief. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my mind, wondering if there was some way I could have said something differently, done something differently. But there wasn't. The damage was done. Jake left for work early in the mornings, not saying much, just quietly slipping out of the house. He'd come back in the evening, his eyes tired, his shoulders heavy. He didn't ask me where I'd been or what I'd been doing. He didn't question me further. He just seemed distant, as if he was already making peace with the fact that things between us might never be the same again. And I couldn't blame him. I had betrayed him in a way that was almost unforgivable. He had trusted me, loved me, and I had thrown it all away for a fleeting sense of validation. A validation I realized I didn't even need. I had pushed him aside for two men who never cared about me the way Jake had. I spent the next few days lying awake at night, feeling a suffocating weight on my chest, knowing that Jake was barely hanging on to any semblance of hope for us. The guilt was unbearable. I couldn't face the idea of losing him, losing my family. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know if it was even possible to fix. One evening, as Jake came home from work, I decided to try again. I couldn't just sit here and wait for him to leave. I had to do something. Anything to show him that I was still here, that I was still trying. He walked in quietly, setting his keys on the counter. There was no greeting, no warmth in his eyes, just the same coldness I had become used to. Jake, I said softly, stepping toward him, trying to find the right words. Can we talk? He didn't look at me, but I saw his body tense. What is there to talk about, Emily? His voice was almost emotionless. It felt like he was speaking to a stranger, not the woman he'd been married to for 8 years. I know I don't deserve it. I started, my throat tight. But I want to fix this. I need to fix this. I've been so stupid. I've hurt you so much. And I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or even ever. But I need you to know that I'm not giving up on us. I'll do whatever it takes. He finally looked at me then, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and something else. Something I couldn't quite read. I don't know, Emily, he said quietly. I don't know if I can get past this. You say you want to fix things, but you broke something that I'm not sure can be fixed. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. The thought that he might never trust me again, that we might never get back to where we were. It was a reality I wasn't ready to face. I understand, I said, my voice breaking. But I want to try. For us. For the kids. I know I messed up. I know I made a huge mistake. But if you're willing to give me a chance, I'll spend every day showing you how much I love you. How much I need you. Jake didn't answer right away. He just stood there, looking at me, as if he was weighing something heavy on his mind. The silence between us stretched out longer than I would have liked, but I didn't interrupt. I knew this was his decision. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "I'm not saying I'm ready to forgive you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm willing to try. For now. I can't promise that everything will go back to the way it was, but I'm not ready to give up yet. We'll take it one day at a time." It wasn't the clear, cut resolution I had hoped for, but it was something. A small sliver of hope. "I'll take that," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for even considering it." Jake didn't say anything else. He just nodded, and for the first time in days, there was a slight shift in the atmosphere. It wasn't warmth, not yet, but it was a step in the right direction. As the days went by, we tried to navigate the aftermath of what had happened. It wasn't easy. There were moments of silence, moments of frustration, and moments when I thought I might break down completely. But through it all, I was determined to rebuild what I had broken. I started doing everything I could think of to show Jake that I was committed to making things right. I apologized constantly, not just for the affair, but for taking him for granted, for not appreciating everything he had done for me. I went to therapy on my own, trying to understand why I had acted the way I did, trying to heal whatever part of me was broken. But Jake was still distant. I knew he was trying, but it wasn't the same. He wasn't the man I had married, and I wasn't the woman he had fallen in love with. We were both changed, and no matter how hard we tried, I knew it would never be the same again. I had destroyed something beautiful, and no amount of apologies or promises could erase that. But I was going to try. I had to try. Because deep down, I couldn't imagine living without Jake. I couldn't imagine losing my family, and I would do whatever it took to make sure that didn't happen. Even if it meant rebuilding everything from the ground up.